It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Every time that I'm introduced, I almost worry if I go over the top on my energetic or excitement of being here, because it feels like I've been here a while now, even though I'm coming up on 5 months, and I'm really excited to be here. We've had a really promising start on the department. A lot of things that we have to improve here. There's no question about it. More efficiencies that we can experience, but it's great to be here. The city of Dallas is special to me. I always say this all the time, as corny as it might sound. When I moved from San Juan to California when I was young in the mid 70s, I was a Cowboy fan before I spoke English. And so, I've been to the city on many occasions. A few years back, I was at a Major City Chiefs conference when I spoke to one of my friends, Kerr Putney, who at the time was the chief of police of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And I said, you know what, Kerr, if that Dallas job ever opens up, that's something that I'd be interested in. And that was 2 years ago. Originally, I'll tell you that when I retired, I was nearly 30 years in San Jose. And the last 5 as police chief there, that one of the things I wanted to do when I retired was I love coaching football. I was going to be a high school football coach and a history teacher was one of the things that I wanted to do. But then as time went on, I just wasn't ready to hang up my crime fighting boots, so to speak, and wanted to continue. And the city of Dallas was a destination spot for me. I was always going to retire out in North Texas and in this particular area in Dallas because I did want to be closer to here. And one way or the other, I would have been a resident. And now I'm both a resident and the police chief. So I'm excited to be here. Again, as I mentioned before, although I've been here 5 months, sometimes I look back at some of the things that we've done and I go, man, I only got here in February. And it's because there's been so much going on. It's felt like a lot longer. And I don't say that in a negative way, because people always laugh when I say it feels like I've been here a year. It's just so much has happened. Some challenging, mostly all good. And again, as I know as was made mention at the beginning, there are some challenges here, but there's not a major city chief in America that does not know what they're getting into and what they have to accomplish in our large cities. And I'm really very, very excited to undertake that. I'm so impressed with the work of our men and women. I go out on patrol quite often, and the men and women are amazing here. One of the dynamics that we had to do when I came here was really we had to win the hearts and minds of our men and women, because it doesn't matter what kind of a plan we have. If the officers don't believe in it, it'll fail miserably. As the violent plan has been going, and we'll cover some of it in your questions, we've been very fortunate and very pleased with some of the results. Obviously there's from the hotspot policing and concentrating in our areas of need for violence, place network investigations, focused deterrence, and we needed the buy-in from our rank and file. Unbelievable, and so impressed with the support that we've received here from lawmakers, from local council, the mayor, manager's office, businesses, yourselves as an example. And I'll tell you, and I said this before, and when I say I'm appreciative of that, that's just not, I'm not just saying that, because I come from a state where not everyone will jump and say that they support law enforcement. And that's reality. No, are we perfect? Absolutely not. But I come from a place where some people aren't they're frightened, they're afraid to say that they support the men and women of law enforcement, and that's reality. So coming from the outside, it does not fall on deaf ears. I'm completely appreciative of the support that our men and women have gotten as we continue to go down this road. So look forward to the conversation we're going to have. But again, excited to be here. We are, as I mentioned before, the goal here is to make Dallas one of the safest, largest cities in this country. I feel not only do we have the support, we certainly have unbelievable business. We have the men and women that are going to do a tremendous job here that have bought in, and we're all excited to get going. So with that, I'll turn it back over to, I'm getting better at this. Let me get back to the questions that y'all might have for me.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Chief. I'm Jeff Kittner with the Chamber. I've got a few questions that I will start with, but we do want this to be audience driven as well. So if you've got questions for Chief Garcia, please go ahead and post them in the chat or send them to me privately. And what we like to do is call on people to ask their questions rather than me reading them for them. So I'll start with a few questions, Chief. And one thing that's been a particular interest to our chamber is trying to curtail the street racing. And we worked on House Bill 2315 with State Representative John Turner and Morgan Meyer and got that passed in the legislative session. But can you provide us with an update on what's happening with the efforts from the police department to help curtail street racing, including the work of the task force?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question that we have. When I arrived here, those are the loudest things I heard. Reduction of violent crime and street racing. Those are things that I know they're very, very. There's a lot of things in between, but certainly you could tell that those are some of the issues that were affecting our community and things that they were very concerned about. There weren't any street racing takeovers that were reported this last weekend, so we're happy about that. In addition to the work that we're doing, and I'm going to give some statistics in a little bit, we've been working with the Department of Transportation and Public Works to utilize barriers. So we need engineering at some of our intersections. We need to ensure the flow of traffic, but also to make it less comfortable for these individuals to do what they do in our intersections. And so it's certainly things that we need to continue and do. In the two areas, we had a pilot in two intersections that we installed the engineering portion of it, and they were very successful. And so now we're looking to continue to install at least at the 20 major intersections that do it in the city. When it comes to the work, and I mean, you'll always just give all the credit to the men and women of this police department. They just do unbelievable work. When we started keeping track of this, when I got in here in February, from February till July 11th, our task force has made over 3,200, and this is just specific to street racing. The task force has made over 3,200 traffic stops. They've issued 534 hazardous citations. They've given 2,326 regulatory citations, 290 spectator citations. They've towed 391 vehicles. They've made 76 felony arrests, 538 misdemeanor arrests. They've confiscated 81 guns illegally possessed. They've made 113 drug cases, and they've recovered 18 stolen vehicles. And so this is one of the things where certainly, although we're not going to arrest and cite our way out of this issue, and we're going to need help in the engineering and also in other facets to not make roadways unique to street racing. But the men and women are doing a tremendous job. They're absolutely working very hard, and we're doing the best we can to ensure that individuals know that if they take part in this type of activity, that we're going to come after them. What I'll tell you, one of the things that when you see those towed cars, one thing that we've discovered is that you can give a ticket, take someone to jail, but there is nothing that the individuals that are involved in this hate to see more than those vehicles getting towed away. So officers are working extremely hard. I know, very helpful with the bills that were passed. But again, something that we'll keep working on, and we'll keep getting out there, and we'll keep enforcing it.
Thanks, Chief. And that's why we're hopeful that 2315, with the cars being able to be confiscated based on incidents, that we're hopefully that will help you all out as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you a question about crimes against business. Can you give us an update on crimes against business and what the business community can do to help minimize those kinds of crimes?
Well, one of the dynamics as we look at our statistics, one of the things is we're doing really well in burglary, and both burglary and robbery. Right now, our business burglary to date is down nearly 25, over 24% from last year, and our business robbery is down 40% from last year. And so we've been doing well in that area. Now, granted, if you're a victim of a crime, obviously that's not good enough. But what I'll say is that just as a city as a whole, we've looked at these areas and we've seen that both property crime and robberies are definitely down. But again, working with your area MPOs, working with your station majors, there's always ways to improve by whether it's CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, and seeing ways that we can make businesses more crime resistant, so to speak, and then also working with your employees to ensure that it's safe for them as well. And if that, not only, there's two things that we have to change here. One, obviously, we want to see a reduction in crime with the numbers. Okay, but that's not the only thing we have to do. We also have to change the perception, because the perception always lags behind the numbers. So I can tell you that the numbers are going down in areas, our violent crime trends going down, obviously our property crimes going down, but the perceptions lag behind that. And so we have to ensure that both our patrons and our employees know that both of those things are occurring. And absolutely, we're going to be very responsive. I know we're meeting via Zoom at some point. I'm hoping we meet in person. I'm definitely a meet in person guy. And we want our officers getting out there and meeting everyone so that we can really truly work on those perceptions and then really separate perceptions from reality. I spend an awful lot of time with media and others really trying to change that. There is this narrative that we need to change, and that not only do we need to bring those numbers down, but we also need to change those perceptions, and we got to do that together.
Great. Thanks, Chief, very much. Another question. I sent our public safety committee some information in advance of this and asked them to send some questions. So I've got a couple of those as well. What are some things or initiatives that DPD is undertaking now as more crimes transition from the physical world to the virtual world? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, we're in the final stages of procuring the electronic recovery and access to data, ERAD. It's called ERAD platform. What ERAD does, it allows us to seize illicit funds that are stored on prepaid debit cards, gift cards, cryptocurrency, peer-to-peer payment applications. We're seeing more and more. We just recently had a presentation at one of my staff meetings where this is becoming, it doesn't matter what you are, whether you're dealing in robberies, narcotics, or what have you, that people are using Bitcoin, cash apps. They're using prepaid debit cards to transfer things in. They can even go so far, anything that has a magnetic strip, a hotel card to let you in your door, anything that has a magnetic strip, you can have currency on it. And so, it's something that we definitely need to get moving forward. And it's a great question. We're currently looking at building a digital forensics laboratory, which will provide our investigators and officers with a one-stop shop for all digital evidentiary needs. In addition to cryptocurrency, digital currency seizures, that lab will also offer and include cell phone extractions, laptop hard drive extractions, automated forensic accounting services, video enhancement, vehicle information systems, Apple CarPlay downloads, those type of things, because we know and we recognize that we certainly have to get our technology up and running to catch these crooks that are trying to do things to not be detected.
Thanks, Chief. A couple more questions from me. I'm starting to get a bunch of questions from our audience members, so let me run through a couple more. What do you see as the biggest challenges for DPD over the next year?
Well, we need to grow. We need to grow in a responsible fashion, but we need to grow. There's no question about it. We also, ensuring that our community has faith in us, trusts us, and understands that, because that's how we will have a safer city. And then getting our arms wrapped around this violent crime issue. I'm very confident, very pleased with our crime plan. I appreciate the support that we've received from the mayor and from council with regards to that plan. And so as that moves forward, getting the resources that we'll need to not only continue with our violent crime plan, but then to deal with the other issues that affect our city.
And Chief, a related question on that is, what do you see as the optimal number of officers for a city of our size? And do you have the budget to make that happen?
So what I'll say is this. Well, I'll answer it this way. We have to really not only deal with the surge in crime that we've seen, that we're getting our arms around, but also from a population perspective. Obviously, as the city has grown, we've also lost officers. And so we need to ensure that we're at that we are at that right number. There is no magic. There is a national number per capita. But there is no real magic number other than to know that where we were at, when we were a smaller city a few years back, we obviously had more officers. And so certainly what I would like to do personally, I would like to get to 3,200 officers, right? See where we're at there, and then reassess and go from there. Obviously, we have built efficiencies in the department in the last 5 years. The right care program that assists us with dealing with dealing with the mentally ill has been extremely helpful. The Office of Integrated Public Safety Solutions has also been extremely helpful in dealing with some of the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so there have been other efficiencies that have been very helpful. However, what I'll say is we need to grow as a department. I'm hopeful that not only can we get to that 3,200 number, we have to look at two things, right? When we talk about growth, we have to look at the people that we are losing in retirement, how many people are retirement eligible, and how many people are coming in the door, so that we can continue to grow as a police department. I'm very hopeful that we can go back to our pre-pandemic hiring numbers, and we'll get back on the right track. And so, that's where I want to go. I'm not going to give you, hey, I need to get to 3,700 officers, 3,800 officers. I'm not going to do that. What I'll tell you is I want to get to 3,200 at some point, and then we will reassess where we are from there. I know we need to grow. There's no question about it. But what I've always said is this, as a resident of the city of Dallas, I want my police department to grow, but I also want to be able to take my kids to the local park, play on the grass that's not 4 feet tall because someone couldn't mow it. I want to grow as a police department, but I also would like to take my kids to the local library and not have to go to the only library that's open because they've shut down libraries because of budget issues. And so we're going to grow, but we're going to grow responsibly.
Thanks very much, Chief. I'm going to now turn it over to some questions from our attendees, and we'll start with Andrew Krause, who's with Congressman Colin Allred's office. Andrew, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff, and hello, Ken, as well. Hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully we'll see each other soon outside a Ranger game that one time. Chief, bienvenidos to Texas. Glad to have you. And good luck to your first Texas summer, as August is around the corner. So my question to you is, so in your time in San Jose, were there any programs or initiatives that you guys saw that were really successful that you guys are planning on or have already brought to the Dallas department?
Well, some of the initiatives that we did, there was 3 initiatives. There's a few that we started, but number one, I know we've done some of these forms here, but we're going to enhance them. One is implicit bias training to our officers. The other one is procedural justice training for our officers. The next one is bringing our academies out of the building itself and getting out into the community before they're sworn, so that they understand who their community is, why they're doing what they're doing before they raise their right hand and go out into those communities. We also want to institute, we're going to be working with our college institutions to institute a history and policing class. And what I mean by that history and policing class, there are a lot of reasons why communities, particularly our communities of color, have a distrust in the police. Whether it's the Latino community or African-American community or other community groups. There's a reason how we got there, and we need to know how we got there in order to improve. And so we want to institute and work from a very educational based perspective, from a historical perspective on law enforcement, so we can that's probably the wrong term, but so we can give knowledge to our officers as to why it is that they just can't walk into any, living room and automatically have people earn respect. That it has to be earned. It's not just going to be given, and there's a reason for that. And then finally, we want to work on a use of force platform. Use of force. It's the most polarizing issue in American law enforcement. And we're going to work on a platform so that we make that use of force, visible to the public as well as ourselves, so that there's nothing that we're holding back from our community from that perspective. So those are a few things that we instituted that were very successful, and they were helpful from a perspective of transparency with our community. Because I'll tell you this, listen, my mantra here is about weeding and seeding. We are going to weed the criminal element off of the streets of Dallas. No one, you will not meet a police chief that wants to take the criminal element off the street more than I do. You will not. But you also won't meet one that wants to give back as much as I can to the community so that we have that right balance and doing the right thing. And those 4 programs are things that balance out our proactive nature with regards to ensuring that our community has that trust and we build that transparency.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. I know you and the Congressman got to talk for a little bit, so I know I speak for him when I say he appreciates your time as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Next question is from David Dean with NTCC. Hey, David, how are you? Good to see you here.
Hey, Jeff, great. Good to be here. And thank you very much for sponsoring this program, one of many, many great ones that you do. So, Chief, good to see you again. The North Texas Crime Commission tells you hello and welcome. Your honeymoon period's almost, I've noticed you've been here almost 6 months now, so you're bound to have a lot of observations. We're all looking forward to September the 1st, because that's when the Census Bureau is going to get the detailed data out to all the cities and counties throughout the country. Our projection is that within a 60-mile radius of DFW Airport, we'll have about 9 million people live in those counties and cities, about 238 cities and counties included in the radius of 60 miles around DFW Airport. The reason for that question to you is one of your biggest challenges is retaining the good ladies and gentlemen on the force and attracting more. You've got a lot of competition that are looking at your best and brightest and wanting to move them over their forces because their needs are similar to ours. What are your best thoughts, or when will you have those kind of finalized as to how do you retain your personnel, and how do you grow it internally to meet those needs you talked about earlier?
That's a fantastic question. And I always say that we need to attack this issue. It's one of the dynamics, having been a chief before and having dealt with these issues, that I think a lot of chiefs have to deal with. But there's a few areas that we need to concentrate on. Number one, we have to ensure that we are honoring the men and women that we currently have and ensuring that we're doing everything we can so that they're happy here, so that they don't leave us. That's number one. Number two, we need to recruit. We need to go out. We have to actively recruit for officers. Number three, and what I'd like to do is we need to go on a push to see, are there any officers currently in the state of Texas that would like to come to the Dallas PD? Okay, because that'll save, if there are. Okay, the next one is, and it kind of goes back to the first one with keeping our people here. But another dynamic is, if I can keep someone who's eligible to retire this year, and let's say that we do something this year, for whatever reason they decide to stay an additional year, you see how that offsets what the delta is. If I can keep someone who's eligible to retire for another year, another 2 years, that helps us tremendously. And so, I'm not gonna, I've always said this, listen, particularly today in American law enforcement, we are going to leave no stone unturned here in Dallas, here in the state of Texas, and abroad to recruit. And trust me, I will be making some of those trips so that these applicants have a chance to hear from me that we have a product to sell. Because I'll tell you, as I sit here, and as I mentioned earlier about the support that we get here in Dallas and in the state of Texas as compared to other places in this country, let's not make it, there's people that are kicking the tires on that support. And that is incredibly important. We have a product to sell here. I think I have a good base to sell it because I've been somewhere where that support hasn't always been there. So I do know what that feels like. And so obviously ensuring, it always comes down to ensuring that our officers feel fairly compensated, that we're not an outlier with regards to other large cities in the area, and that we keep morale high. Whether that morale comes from my administration and how they treat our officers, whether the morale comes with the support they feel from the council and mayor, those type of things, the support that we get from the managers, like all those things really matter. And so this is a real team effort, not just from the department, but the city as a whole, to ensure that our officers feel appreciated. It really comes down to this. We're dealing with human beings, and I don't care what line of work you're in. If you do not feel appreciated, you will not be happy. And so we need to ensure we do everything we can to ensure that our officers feel appreciated, that they feel supported, and we won't have those issues. I will tell you, we have not seen, and I have not been told, we have not seen an exodus. We've not seen an issue recruiting. And so these are all positive things. And I think there's some very positive things as a city that we're doing to ensure that this is a police department that appreciates its men and women. And this will be a selling point. And I'm looking forward to being able to do that.
Great. Thanks, sir.
Thanks, David, for the question. Next question is from our board chair, Tina Young with Market Wave. Hi, Tina.
There. Chief Garcia, have you seen a rise in road rage incidents, and do you think there's if you have, is there sort of a pandemic effect that maybe is causing more of this? We see it on the news more often. And I think the follow-up is just, as all of us are going to be out commuting to work and going to business meetings and all of that, is there any way to really avoid that type of incident, or any tips you have?
Well, I'll say this, we've definitely seen an increase in our road rage. I do a lot of work with criminologists, and I'm not an individual that is going to blame all violent crime on the pandemic. I think we have some individual personal responsibility to take on that. And what the criminologists will tell you is it's too soon to tell. Everyone likes to jump that it's a pandemic related, but the criminologists will tell you it's too soon to even tell if that has any reason. I'll tell you that, oftentimes that we've done public service announcements and other things with regards to with road rage, and what we've said to people is not to get involved. If something happens, just take a deep breath. And don't get involved in the interchange in the interaction with these individuals. And certainly, if you feel that you're being followed or other things, to immediately call 911 before it escalates to a certain level, because we are all at a heightened state of awareness when it comes to these issues. I don't think there's a major police department, including our state troopers and DPS, that does not realize that call is going to be very important. And so we're doing those public service announcements. There is no rhyme or reason. They are spread out. They're spread out throughout the jurisdiction. And so we just really want to make sure people not get involved when it comes to that. Because what we're seeing as well is well, I don't say ever, I'm speaking hyperbole, but it's very rarely a one-on-one situation, and someone else in that car ends up getting hurt. And so it's a situation where we just don't want people getting involved in the conflict and to call us before things get out of hand.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tina, very much. Next question is from Jenny King with UT Southwestern. Hey, Jenny, good to see you. Jenny, looks like you're still on mute.
Yes, I had the mute challenge. Chief Garcia, welcome to Dallas. We're so glad you're here and appreciate your enthusiasm and your approach to, and we wish you, great success. I know that there's been a lot of conversation about mental health distress and the new approach to bringing a fire department official, a police officer, and a social worker together to make those calls, and that has been successful. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's been incredibly successful. You know, I think all departments are trying to think, and I say all departments, and I actually really mean that. As part of being a part of the Major City Chiefs Association, I can tell you this goes around our roundtable, regardless where we're at in the country meeting. And I think everyone seems to be coming up with a strategy, and they're all very similar. That one, I think we're all recognizing that the majority of these calls are not law enforcement related. We know that they can escalate to that. There's no question. But the fact that here in the city of Dallas, the Right Care program, which is what you just described, does exactly that, you know, with bringing a clinician, a medic, and an officer in case things don't work out, is something that we have expanded, that we'll continue to expand, because it certainly helps us. I mean, I think there's other things that we can end up trying to do. I think, you know, barring, you know, weapons being placed in certain situations, I think we need to deal with this as a medical issue, not necessarily a law enforcement issue. I think we could say, you know, at least in the 30 years that I've been a police officer, that, you know, sending individuals armed with guns for someone who's having a mental crisis without anything else being there has not ended well many times. And that's a reality. And so we certainly need to start dealing with these as medical issues and non-law enforcement issues, and have law enforcement in or about the area or there, but certainly we shouldn't have to always be the first responders to this. And that's something we need to continue to look at and study. I think the Right Care program is an amazing program. It certainly fits that mold. And I think that's a direction. And I think I'll tell you this is not just us or me. I think every major police chief in America will tell you the same thing, is that we shouldn't be the first responders to these type of situations unless there's an actual weapon or violence or other things involved. And certainly our Right Care program is it's a step in the right direction. I think it can be, and it should be, a model for others to follow.
That's awesome. Well, I wish you success in growing that. And just a follow-up, I asked Jeff if I could just do a shout out to your SRO officers, or your SROs, I guess, that are at Lake Highlands High School in the Richardson district. I'm a parent there, and since they joined our family at high school a few years ago, it's made a tremendous difference. And so I just want to give you a shout out for the SROs in the district, but also all the other school districts that you serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenny, for that question. I think we've got another related mental health question from Blake Lewis with 3 Box Strategic Communications. Hi, Blake. Good to see you here.
Good afternoon. And it's really, I guess, a follow-up a little bit on Jenny and her questions. So just a real short comment. What sort of experiences have you had with the Right program, you know, now that it's in place and starting to function?
Well, with our Right Care program, we're finding that, you know, it's taking a lot of the burden off of the patrol officer, that not only one doesn't have to respond necessarily to a call that the expertise calls for more than what they can have at that time, but then two, keeps them available to answer the more pressing, violent criminal calls that they have. And so it's been great. I mean, one of the things with the Right Care program, you know, it's oftentimes, I always say this, I think we always make an issue when an officer has to use force in certain situations, and that always gets a lot of attention. But what we never talk about are the thousands and thousands and thousands of weapons calls and other type of calls that our officers respond to that don't end up in those type of confrontations. And I think what Right Care does, we'll never know, you know, how many of those necessarily those situations they help stop, but we do know deep in our hearts that they certainly stops incidents from escalating nearly on every call that they go to. So I'm very, very appreciative of the program. I'm very, very happy that this was already in place, and I'm just being able now to just support it and increase it as we can.
Great perspective. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake, for the question. Next question is from Rachel Crawl with the North Dallas Neighborhood Alliance. Hey, Rachel, how are you?
Good, thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thank you. Greetings to Chief Garcia. I'm with a neighborhood alliance that covers districts 11 and 12. New representative from that to the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce. So this is a learning experience for me. The 911 call center is my question. It periodically goes through times when there are certainly not enough call takers. And then I think currently we've got DPD officers working overtime in there to help alleviate that. So it's a two-pronged question. Is that really the best use of their overtime? And what is the problem with the call center's retention? So I look forward to your answer.
Yeah, no, I thank you for the question. So I'll tell you right now, we were in crisis mode. We need someone to answer the 911 call. And so when we say, is that the best use of their overtime at the present time? Yes, it is. Because I need officers answering the 911 call. Without them answering the 911 call, our officers don't have a clue where to go, and we can't give the community help. So I cannot press upon how important it is to staff that and to ensure that we answer the phone in a reasonable amount of time. Now, is that the long-term perspective? Absolutely not. That's not long-term. That's not the solution. Certainly, this is not a problem that we got into overnight, but we're working on getting out of it as quickly as possible. It's going to come down to compensation for our 911 center. That's huge. It's going to come down to recruiting, which is incredibly important. We just had an event on Friday. We're going to have another event next weekend or this weekend coming up to get more interested individuals. It's going to come down to training and getting our folks trained quicker and get them on the floor as quickly as possible. And it's going to come down to us getting and developing a non-emergency line where people can call a line that doesn't necessarily rise to a life and death type situation, but there's another line that doesn't tie up our 911 call takers so that they're able to answer other phone calls. And so absolutely what we're looking at, and I'll tell you this. So one of the things that we did in this mode is we had our recruits that were in the academy spend a couple weeks in the call center getting trained and actually working and helping out. And although I did that as a crisis moment, we're going to continue that because for two reasons. Number one, there is absolutely nothing wrong with our police officers seeing what a day in the life is of our amazing dispatchers. Right. And to know that when they're out the field and they're busy, that it's just as busy in that room. And so to get that perspective is incredibly important. And then number two, I want to be able to have a break glass in case of emergency. And God hope we don't get to this place once we get to a good spot in our 911 call center, which we're confident we're going to get to. But to have something that in a crisis, we have something already planned is something that I'm hopeful we never get to there again, but at least we'll have a plan once we get there. So anyway, so that long and short of it, I tell you what, I know it's extremely important to our mayor, to our council, to our city manager, to the men and women here, to our call takers themselves. I went in when I rode patrol on July 3rd, I stopped by the call center and it was fully staffed because we had our recruits and the officers around the department that maybe on modified duty that could help be a better use there. And I tell you, there was a lot of smiles from the actual dispatchers and call takers themselves that know that they had reinforcements and they know that not only did we listen, but that we care. And we know how important they are to us. And we really want to fix the long-term issues, to your point. We don't like these Band-Aid type of things, but at the end of the day, I need to ensure that when people call 911, someone answers. And so that's why we did what we did.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel, for the question. Chief, one more question for me before
Sure.
we move to close this out. Talk about what you view as the department's role with homelessness and panhandling. We've seen an increase in homelessness at some of the intersections in North Dallas, such as at 75 and Forest and Royal and 75, and talk about what you view as the department's role related to those and what some solutions you see the department being able to offer there.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll deal with this with the homeless type of situation first. I equate that quite similar to our response to mentally ill calls. You know what? Homelessness by itself is not a crime. And so we need to deal with the crimes that come about in homeless communities, but not every homeless individual is a criminal. But there is criminal activity that occurs in that. And so we need to respond to that. There's no question, but there's definitely a difference between us being the person, and I'll make it black and white, from the police department being the entity that someone calls when, let's say, someone's sleeping inside, right outside a doorway to a business. There's probably better entities to call to deal with that other than the police department. You know, when it comes to panhandling, I've seen it firsthand. As I said, I live in the city. And I tell you what, I had a great conversation with Councilmember Schultz actually on last week. And I think we need to give people options. I'll tell you what, I think what we need to do, and she's right on point in trying to find a way where, listen, I get people want to help. I see them in front of me when I'm driving home wanting to help. And my heart goes out as well. I'm not real excited about enforcing, well, two things. Number one, I hope we all understand that enforcing whatever law on the actual individual that's panhandling is probably not the solution. Number one, I mean, they're not going to jail. I mean, they're not going to jail. And if they do, they're not going to stay there very long. I don't think giving tickets is going to be an issue. So we're going to have to deal with the supply, so to speak. And one of the things I'll tell you is, if we, and this was the council member's idea, I will say this, is that if we came up with a way where people know, hey, listen, if you want to help these individuals, here's an app. Here's something that you can do to send money to help long-term. Then I'll tell you, I would be more apt to sending officers, they saying, we gave people options. We know what this causes. We know how dangerous it is. Now we can head into an enforcement type of perspective, because now the Good Samaritan that otherwise I would not be crazy about doing something for is like, hey man, you had an option. We explained to you why it's not right. We're explaining to you how dangerous it is. We gave you another option to help the homeless in a very easy way, and you still continue to do something that our neighborhoods don't want to do. Now we may have to take something to the next level. But I'm fully in support of coming up with those plans so that when someone sees someone that's in need, and you know what, and they're the Good Samaritan that comes out, at least they can go, hey, okay, $2, and I send it to this app, and we develop a way where we can get more people help.
Thanks very much, Chief. Next question is from Jennifer Chandler from Bank of America. Hi, Jennifer, welcome.
Thank you, and welcome, Chief Garcia. It's so great to visit with you. It was really along the lines of that same comment. Just curious, how can we help you in the business community to get those other options out there? I love the idea of the app. In the interim, are there things we can do to better educate folks on how to handle those issues?
Well, I'll tell you what, I will certainly not steal Councilmember Schultz's thunder on this. I'll tell you, I'll reach back and loop back with her to say that there was a lot of positive feedback and interest in that. I think that's something that would excite her as well. And so, I mean, I'll leave it at that, but certainly those are the type of things though, because again, and I said this before, in my old life in San Jose, we had a very similar issue with, well, we had a similar issue with individuals feeding the homeless at parks. And the issues that caused with the surrounding neighborhoods and the garbage and other things, you know, and on one hand, you were like, okay, well, these church groups are coming to feed the homeless because in their hearts, they want to help. On the other hand, they don't understand that it's causing other repercussions for the community and the neighborhood. So I always, as a police chief, was like, listen, I'm not going out there. The last thing I want is one of my officers giving a ticket, citing a Good Samaritan for feeding someone who's hungry. However, what I will say is this, in that same realm, if they knew that hey, listen, don't do it here, but if you want to help, here's an area that we've picked out and said, if we do it here, it'll minimize the impact to the neighborhood and the community. Now, if they didn't listen to me then, when I try to explain it to them, then I don't have an issue going, all right, listen, your Good Samaritan part only goes so far. I mean, I gave you an option because it was impacting our neighborhoods. And so you could have practiced being a good Samaritan and at the same time helped your neighborhood and community out. And so if we give our community options to do that, I think that's the right way to go. And ultimately, if they don't listen to those options, that we've come together to one, listen, we're telling you, we want you to help them. We're just telling you this is the right way to do it. And if that point they didn't listen, then you'd have our assistance would definitely be coming.
Thanks very much, Jennifer, for that question. Next up, potentially to close us out, is Ken Malcolmson. I know Ken has a couple of questions.
Thank you, Chief, for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. And thanks for your leadership in the community. A couple of quick questions for you. One is, you and DPD took a pretty noticeable position in opposition to permitless carry. Now that it's been signed into law, tell us about the implementation process and how do you balance the needs and fears in the community?
So that's a great question. And let me tell you, so yes, I was very vocal. Went down to Austin, spoke at a press conference. I'll tell you what, it doesn't happen every day that police chiefs, associations, that everyone's lined up saying this is not a good idea. And let me explain why I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, well, there's a bunch of reasons why I don't think it's a good idea, but the lack of training. I mean, in essence, and I have to look, we still have to review the final as it comes out. But in essence, you can buy a gun and not know where a safety is on the gun. You can buy a gun without ever having shot at a target, without ever knowing how to load it, without knowing how to clean it, without knowing how to store it properly. Those are all things that we would like responsible gun owners to know. And those things concern me. You know, we've had since I've been here, I can't tell you the tragedies we've had with children finding weapons that are not secured, and the tragedy that happens then. So we really want to work and see what the final language is in the legislation, because I also don't want to cause also a mass panic either. I'm friends with some deputy chiefs. I'm friends with a deputy chief that was in Oklahoma City, who's now actually down in California, that said, hey, they've had permitless carry in Oklahoma for a while, and they did not necessarily see an increase in violent crime because of that law. And so my concern is more from a safety perspective. Listen, you know, it's more from a safety perspective than anything else. So we really want to balance that out. Certainly don't want to cause fear or panic in our community. But if there's a way that we can continue just to tell people to be responsible, and if you are eligible and you were able to purchase a gun, you go through the proper steps to at least train yourself.
Great. Thanks, Chief. So two quick follow-up questions. One's a fun one and the other one is a little bit more serious. The fun one is DeMarcus Ware your favorite player?
No, I think what you're looking at, I think that's Charles Haley.
Oh, that's Charles Haley before DeMarcus Ware then.
Yeah, I think we went far back. I've been a Cowboy fan since 1975. So I got a few favorites. I got a few favorites on the Cowboys right now.
There you go.
So we'll see. And I'm very anxious for the season to get started.
That's great. Well, let's close with the last question being one very serious, and that is, I had the privilege last week of attending the Dallas Police Memorial Service, and Chief, I have to say, you just did a magnificent job representing the feelings and emotions of many people in this community during that very solemn ceremony. I wanted you to share, though, with this group, I wanted you to share the perspectives that you shared that day about your feelings, what you felt in San Jose, California on July 7th, 2016.
Yeah, you know, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I know exactly where I was. My message to not only the rank and file here, but the city of Dallas is that they were certainly not alone. This department wasn't alone. I remember seeing that. I remember getting emotional, and so I glued the TV, saw what transpired, saw the You know, my emotions went from anger, sadness, relief, back to anger and sadness. And certainly never did I think that, 5 years from that day that I was in that living room, that I would have the honor to lead or to be part. I don't like saying lead, but to be part of this department and to wear this patch. And so I know that every police officer here, and I saw the trauma that officers that are here that still feel. Later on that day, as you may or may not know, 3 out of the 4 Dallas police officers were out of the same station, in the Southwest, and you could see how people are affected by it. I know I'm affected by it, and certainly this department is as well. But you saw tremendous bravery that day. I saw tremendous bravery that day. It's certainly, I got a question from the media later on, and the answer to that question is, this wasn't an us versus them. This was one individual, one evil individual. And the police officers differentiated between the people that were protesting and this individual. And it astonishes me how people try to combine those things oftentimes. You saw officers saving lives, jumping on protesters, running towards danger. It just epitomized what's good about this profession. And so, I know I felt that 5 years ago. I still feel that today. And it was a solemn day, a day of remembrance, and a day to recognize what's good about this profession.
Well, thank you very much for those. And I will say that you could feel the emotion in your voice that day on July 7th last week. You could feel that, and we in effect heard that again today. So thank you very much, Chief Garcia. Talk about epitomizing the best parts of our police force. You certainly show that every day, and we thank you for that. We thank you for your leadership. And to all the men and women of the DPD, we thank all for your efforts in keeping our community safe. The North Dallas Chamber of Commerce has a very active public safety committee, and we'll look forward to meeting with Chief Garcia in person at some point in the future. So we do appreciate that. We're very engaged with your Northeast Division and North Central Division. So we know what's going on, but we sure would love to have you back again. So thank you again, Chief Garcia, for being here today. On behalf of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, we'll be making a donation in your name to the Austin Street Shelter at the end of this year, thanking you for being with us today. And we also want to thank everyone that's on this call today for your interest in meeting with Chief Garcia, and also for your interest in public safety in general. So thank you for all of your interest and support, and we really look forward to seeing you. We have a very active calendar at the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce. Please take a look at ndcc.org and see all of the great opportunities to connect with people that are doing great things in this community, like Chief Garcia.